Welcome back to another episode of Divine Data. I have a really great friend and amazing guest here today. He's a psychosocial coach and trainer. Ooh, I said it. What a tongue twister. What does that mean, Jonny Dupre? Please explain that.
So psychology is essentially, for me, the study of the self. All of the inner landscapes and the things that go on inside of our consciousness, inside of us, from all of our past history, all of the beliefs that we've created, our attitudes about life, the way that we choose to interpret our reality, all of the inner workings. And then social is obviously where that inner workings meets our spheres of influence. So whether that's our family, our religion, our little socioeconomic class, wherever we come from, or whether it's just the neighborhood that we grew up in. That psychology in each of us has to interact with the other psychologies of all the rest of the people that we choose to connect with. And so I've studied everything from psychology all the way to social dynamics, sociology, influence, and everything in between, so that I can help people make changes in their mindsets in order to change the way they relate to the world.
And how do you think that we should be relating to the world versus how people may be relating to the world before they come to you?
For me, I don't think there's actually a should. And that was the really interesting thing that sort of bridged my gap between who I was as a coach beforehand and who I am now, which is I started to realize that there are, obviously infinite numbers of people in the world with infinite numbers of backgrounds and infinite desires. And so if I were to say to somebody, you should be thinking like this, or you should be thinking like that, then I'm actually imposing my own belief systems on theirs. Whereas the older I get and the wiser I get and the more clients I work with, I find myself at a place now where I would rather ask questions and find out more about what they want and how they want to be thinking, and then act as a facilitator, give them some processes that will allow them to get from where they are right now to wherever that desire is, whether that's a vision or a dream or a goal, whatever their intention is.
So you consider yourself more of someone like a guide. You're pointing the way to the direction that they want to go in, not necessarily a direction that you've laid out.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, please don't get me wrong. There are, obviously with applied neuroscience and all the rest of the stuff that we've, gathered from positive psychology, and well-being over the course of the last 10, 15 years, there are some, let's call them best practices that do help to enrich and enhance someone's daily life in order for them to stay rooted and stay connected to who they are, which would give them a really a beautiful field that they can tap into in order to get to whatever that desire is. So there are some, let's call it guidelines that one can follow. But ultimately, the destination needs to be determined by each of us.
So if you were to tell me right now, I'm a new coaching client, I'm calling to see a discovery call, and I'm I'm very fact-based, and I need you to give me 3 of your top best guidelines to see if it works, it resonates with me. What would you say?
Okay, so first off, I actually wouldn't answer your question. And here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes when a client comes in to see somebody like me, they want to ask a ton of questions and then immediately get answers. But the problem is that if I give those answers, then the individual I'm talking to is not building inside of their own mind their ability to work through their process. So they're trying to outsource their thinking to somebody else. And so oftentimes when a client asks me a question like that, I'll say something to the effect of, I'd love to answer that for you. Let me ask you a couple of questions first. And then I'll ask them questions about them, mostly because your personality is uniquely you. And so if I'm going to give you an answer to some of these guidelines, I'm going to want to place it or give it to you or offer it to you in a way that fits with who you are as an individual and who you want to be. So I would ask a couple of questions first, but in general, solutions based, I would speak to them about this misconception that people have that in order for you to resolve a problem, you need to know the ins and outs of that problem. And a lot of people come to see somebody like me because they want to find out why Why did this happen to me? Why did I let this occur? Why was I thinking that way? Why did I take that action? They keep going after this why in the problem. And the problem is that's actually not the way the mind works. And so due to what we know from solution-centered therapy and solution-focused questions, we're actually at a place where we realize I could skip us talking about the problem altogether and be nothing but focused on what it is we want. And with that in mind, it really doesn't matter where you're starting from. You have your destination. And as long as you're taking steps towards that, then you're going to be recognizing in yourself, you're evolving, you're personally transforming. So the first thing is to snap people of that myth that they need to know everything there is to know about their problem in order to have some sort of catharsis that will ultimately resolve it. Knowing your problem doesn't create change. So that would be sort of the first guideline. Second guideline would be all about context. And I know that you've heard this before, Ms. Samantha, which is you become a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is something that one of my favorite speakers of all time, Jim Rohn, used to say constantly. And the neuroscience backs it up. You do pick up the isms, the little sayings that people say when you spend enough time around them. You start to hone in your mindset around the way they cultivate theirs, because you are becoming a group. You're forming your own, let's call it little cohort together. And as a result of that, you all share with each other things. Well, not all sharing is good sharing. So so the big thing I would say is let's talk about the importance of the environments you spend time in, the contexts that you choose to place yourself in. And then of course, the third and most important thing for me is then your daily disciplines, which is where do you actually end up spending the majority of your time? What actions do you take every day? Because if we can look at what you're doing consistently, you can see how it connects to your character and who you are as a person. And so then I would break down what are their daily disciplines. And what I've noticed with most of my clients, they don't have any. They really don't have any daily disciplines. So so that becomes a huge aha for a lot of them. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like people think that having their daily cup of coffee is their daily discipline or their ritual.
Well, it is for them. It is for them.
It is for them. And that is something that they can almost base off of it. Okay, if I can do that every day consistently, then I can pick up these other habits. But it's a big mirror that you're showing them. I know that I, up until pretty recently, lacked a lot of discipline. I had all of these ideas and all of this fire ready to share, but I'd start projects and then be I can move on to the next. Or, even when it comes to consistency of eating and meditation and this and that, all of the inner workings, it's really important to develop that. And also what I'm picking up on what you're saying is basically you're a big reminder for people of their self-sovereignty, of their independence, of their innate power, and potent potential that we all have within us, which is really beautiful. And I appreciate how you answered all of that, because I think people do often externalize their power unto others when they see oh, you've gone further in your career, so you have to have the answers for me. Can you give them? When oftentimes, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have all those answers within. It just takes sometimes some guidance to get out of the darkness and into our own light.
You got it. And I think one of the biggest things, and I know that this has been said throughout the ages, a lot, but I don't know if humanity spends enough time actually sitting and thinking through certain of these philosophies. One of which is ultimately, what's really within my control? Where am I 100% sovereign? Our ability to think, our ability to gather wisdom from what's going on around us, whether it's a book, it's a DVD, it's a friend, it's an expert who just happens to be in our space and we're having dinner. What am I autonomously in control of? And I don't think too many people, while they love the Chinese proverb side of that, they don't really actually sit down and think through what that means. And so you're absolutely right. I'm a big, big, big believer in stop wasting time attempting to control things that are ultimately not within your control, which leads to, beautiful virtues like acceptance, understanding, compassion, empathy, courage. It's the ability that there's something going on in my space that's chaos, it's uncertainty, but what I can bring to the chaos is the order of my soul, the order of my mind, and I meet it with virtues like courage and transcendence.
Absolutely. I've been saying recently, 2020 clear vision, and we're going through that. Like, people might think that it's all like time of uncertainty and all of that, but you can gain this clarity within, and all of those virtues that you're talking about, spending that time going inwards. We're gifted almost this time right now, if you can look at it in a positive light, to do all of this inner work, so that when we can come back out, we have that inner clarity, we know what we can control, and we have the capacity to, next time something comes to rattle us, we don't become as shaken up.
And I think, number one, I agree with you completely. And most people wait until a catastrophe or a crisis occurs before they start cultivating those skills. It's like they need to be triggered into going, oh my God, this thing is important. Yeah, it's been important. But we need to have something hit us for us to go, got it. I need to start focusing in on this.
You got to be shaken to be awakened. That's what they say.
And one of my favorite quotes is, a hero's journey never begins with, and everything was great. Like never. And if you look at Joseph Campbell's work around the monomyth, in the hero's journey, the beginning of it is always a struggle. They call it a call to action. And it means a problem occurs that the hero can't ignore, and the hero tries to say no to it. It's like, no, I'm just a normal person. Yeah, you may be ordinary, but you are now thrust into an extraordinary situation. And as a result of that, you have a chance to add that little extra to your ordinary life in order for you to meet it. And I think the biggest thing for me that I've been noticing in humanity lately, and I know that I spend a great deal of time thinking about this, is people lack a life philosophy. Back in the day, philosophy was something that we spent a great deal of time. There were men and women who did nothing but think all day long. And then they went and spoke about thinking, so that people could develop their own life philosophy for approaching these situations as they come up. But they actually allocated a certain amount of these beautiful resources inside of themselves on a day-to-day basis to almost step back and prepare the space, so that when these moments come up, and how many a day, they come at us constantly, that our life philosophy is the order that we add to that chaos. And I just don't think too many people have it, especially since so many individuals I've spoken to are done with the dogma of religion. They're just done. They don't want dogma. They don't want hard boundaries and hard rules. They want sort of understandings. They want principles that allow for living let's call it a blessed life. And from within that philosophy, they choose the way they will interpret it. And that, for me, is the biggest difference between what others would identify as religion and spirituality. The study of one's own spirit. That, for me, is directly linked to someone's life philosophy.
Absolutely. It's the, no longer externalizing our powers. It's the ability to, know what you can control, and know that there is this whole inner workings, like an inner universe that you have going on. That's such a complexity that we don't really need it from elsewhere. And once we tap into that, it opens up this remembrance or consciousness that we've always had. And, you know, we are able to kind of shut off the exterior noise that's been, you know, putting debris on top of our own soul's purpose, our own spirit, all of those things. So all of a sudden we become like zombies and we're like, must go work in these process driven jobs and follow the man and do these things. And then one day something happens where they're like, why have I been doing this? And that's their soul being like, hello, I'm here.
Wake up call. Yeah. And for me, I call that coming back to yourself. And it's a byproduct, in my opinion, of our social spheres of influence. Again, it's like, who are we spending time around? What culture did we grow up in? Are we listening to our mothers and our fathers tell us that that's not the job we should be doing, that that's not the career that's going to get us the life of our dreams? And I know why they're doing it. They're doing it because they love. And in their interpretation of reality, love means telling you, trying to save you from doing something that you're going to wake up from later and realize that you're not doing. But what they don't understand is that if you were to follow what they're telling you to do, that's actually still a continuation of their sleep. So neither one of you are awake.
Yeah, it's their fear too. It's their own traumas around not being able to fully express themselves. And I feel like we're really lucky to be a part of like the generations that we're in right now, because I see it happening more and more. And like looking at someone who's like my father, like, love you, Dad, if you see this, but you know, he's got his ways set about him, and it's very hard to reprogram a consciousness that has been going through that their entire life, or a spirit, or whatever you want to call it. And
without desire, for sure. Unless the individual, it's a big thing. Once again, control, not control. You know, you see people going through it, and now you love them, and you're the one wanting to break them out of it, whereas they're loving you and trying to break you out of it. Now you guys are standing there on opposite ends of a field throwing stones, as opposed to asking questions. And that's the biggest thing I'm noticing, especially as an American. As I listen to people walk around, I'm realizing they make a lot more statements in relationship than questions. And for me, statements are great when you need to express, when you feel a need to express something that's important to you. But if you're trying to get to know somebody better, or you're trying to cultivate a deeper intimacy, or you're trying to help support them in the way that they need, it makes a lot more sense to ask them questions, because that's going to open up doors in the mind. Making statements is shutting doors. It's conclusions. This is the conclusion I've come to. Well, that's a thought that's been had, that you're just expressing, versus asking a question, which is, what new thought could we be having?
Yeah. Too many people get stuck on like
everything.
Yeah, too many people get like stuck on like these islands of certainty when we live in a sea of eternity. And it's like, if you stay on your island of certainty, you will be there alone. And like, there are so many other options out there. So those questions open those gateways to the sea of eternity.
You got it. I actually couldn't have created a better metaphor myself. Nicely done.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to go into asking you about authentic leadership. I wanted to see what that meant to you. Authenticity in leadership, what does it mean?
You know, that is a very, very, very good question. And here's why, because there's a lot of different directions I could go with the concept of authenticity. Because we literally just got done talking about the fact that there is a you that you have been being by doing the job that you do and living the life that you live, and then something comes along and wakes you up, and now you change or become somebody new. Well, I have to ask, were you not the you were before, and is the you are now any less you than that other you? And or were they both authentic? And now that you have woken up, or have made a connection, or learned something, or evolved something that you didn't know you could evolve, now you're just a new authentic. You know, and so it begs the question of, what's the key definition, or what's the key word for authenticity? What does that actually mean to each individual? But I think what you mean by that is a set of virtues or values that are practiced by a leader that allows them to meet who is choosing to follow them, so that they have an agreement that enhances them both or enhances all of them. That's what I think you're saying. Am I somewhere around that? Did I
I
get
mean,
close to that?
absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sort of just out here trying to figure out exactly all of the different qualities of authentic leadership. You know, I think it comes in all shapes and sizes, but I think that that is a really good basis to start out from, because one of my things that I like to speak on often is how, you know, we are all each other's students and teachers. And I always feel up leveled when I'm working with my own coaching clients. Like, I feel energized by it. I feel like perhaps even this is information that I need for my own life right now, or that I'm pulling this from, you know, my past authentic selves and bringing it into this reality now. So it's all authentic at the end of the day. And I think that actually makes you the most authentic leader, is to be able to come out and be like, hey guys, I've had my shadows and demons and all of those things as well. And this is the path I took. And if you guys want to like see where I've gone and sort of emulate some of that stuff for yourself, awesome. If none of it resonates with you, awesome. Like, what could you teach me so that I can continue on my way?
I agree. And what I'm really enjoying about listening to you share all that right now is the virtues that keep popping into my mind as you were beautifully expressing that. Virtues like vulnerability, virtues like acceptance, open-mindedness. You know, like if you're sitting there saying, I'm the one telling you how things are going to go and I'm not receiving anything, then you're not being overly open. There's not a lot of openness there. And yet there's also a certitude of this is, because if a leader doesn't actually at some point in time lead, just step in and say, okay, I've listened now, I've gathered all the information, I've asked a ton of questions, now decisive. This is what we're going to do. And then, of course, responsibility, the virtue of responsibility, which is they then take responsibility for having made that decision, which means if something goes wrong as a leader, they are the first to step in and say, it's my job to now make the changes around this and make it right for us, for the we in it. But I also hear things like faith, trust, truthfulness, surrender. For me, surrender is not a virtue. For me, surrender is an action that's born of acceptance.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, acceptance is the virtue, but I feel like surrender is the action. Like, I am surrendering. It's the process that you go into from accepting that what is what is. But I also heard determination. Okay. I also I heard in the back accountability, which is super important. Candor, honesty. These things are extremely important as virtues in leaders. Now, how they manifest themselves is going to be unique per each individual, because the way you trust and the way I trust can still be trust, but it appears differently.
Absolutely. That's a good transition into like what I was just thinking right now. Was we met at an anarchy conference where like the word leader has a heavy weight to it. There are
It has a heavy weight to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in our circles that have an aversion to it. But the thing is that deep down, we all know we need some sort of leadership, and whether or not we want to call them way showers or some sort of other word that has less heaviness or density to it for certain people, because we may not need the leaders that we have today in the world, but we need the leaders for the new earth. We need the leaders to be stepping up and using their voice, because not everyone has the capacity to use their voice, even though they may be thinking along the same lines and have their own sovereign ideas of how we could better humanity, better the planet. There are specific humans that come here into this world that are designed to at least voice those things for the people. So if I'm a voice box, or I'm a leader, or I'm a way shower, or I'm a light worker, or a public speaker, like, you know, I look at moms, teachers, nurses, we're all leaders in our own rights, whether it's of ourselves, a small community like our family, our pets, our little dogs. Like, they need some direction, they need guidance. Everyone, like, and we all do, because there's always someone above or below or right next to us at all times in every certain type of journey that we need to go through to self-actualize and to blossom into the humans that we're meant to be. And I really enjoy these talks because, you know, there's some people who just hear the word leader and they're like, yeah, leader, great, and they go with it. And some people are like, I don't want to talk about that. That is not in my religion. Like,
yeah, I feel you.
And it's okay. And it's okay to have those individualized thoughts where you feel trauma around the word leader, because there are some really traumatizing leaders in this world. But we're not talking about that right now. That's a different type.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's you know, what I learned having attended my, you know, now my 4th or 5th Anarchapulco, is that there is a very, very big difference between the term ruler and the term leader.
Yeah, isn't ruler like Führer, kind of like?
Like,
yes.
for me, the term ruler is somebody who defines the rules. Well, I just got done earlier talking to you about the fact that we as a society, in my opinion, do not want to do dogma anymore. We don't want anybody else setting rules on us. We want to be able to discern and define our own journey, our path. And so as a result of that, we need leaders, because we can't possibly know everything we need to know about all things as we approach new arenas that we want to play in, new contexts, new people, new situations that we want to thrive in. It's the first time doing it. So it would be best if we had somebody there to say, let me show you some things that I've gathered in my time doing this, so that I can shortcut your learning process, so that you don't have to go through the same 12 years I went through in order to gather these, call them golden nuggets. You know, let's get you through that a little faster so that you can then take the next step and then teach the next person. So it rolls downhill. And for me, that's the very definition of teaching. It's the sharing or passing of oral tradition. That's how we evolve.
I evolved just spending a week with you in Mexico, you know, and
you and I had some good conversations.
Some really good conversations, dude, and really eye-opening. And I saw you as many things: a reflection, a teacher, a leader, an inspiration. And, you know, we mentioned some of your jobs earlier, but you also are a killer dancer, and you also teach dance as well. Am I right?
I do.
So, like, with that, I feel like even just people leading by inspiring change, or inspiring beauty, or inspiring light in others by just being so fully themselves and so fully alive in their soul purpose, and living through joy instead of living for joy. And that was something I really saw in you. I mean, I think in the first like 3 minutes of meeting you, you were like cracking jokes and giving me a hard time, but like it didn't even, it felt like so authentic. It was like, this is who this guy is, and he just shows you right away. There's no like, oh, hello, pleasantry, now I'll let you know in the next couple days how weird I can get or how awesome I am. Weird in a good way. And you just like show it, and you're proud of it, and you're like, this is it. And, you know, even like boogieing with you on the dance floor, it just like exudes this light, this inspiration. I mean, I got on stage after talking to you, man. Like, what if I hadn't had those conversations with you? I probably would have like never done any of it, even though I didn't actually stand up at the bar and just start reciting my thing like you told me to do. I actually did get up on stage the next day.
And you did a great job. Yeah, it was a beautiful moment to behold. It's definitely a beautiful moment to behold.
Yeah, I was really grateful that you were there to see that. Thank you.
Well, grateful for the opportunity to share any of the wisdom that I've gathered in my short time on this ball of rock of ours. For me, the thing that I want other people to start picking up is that there's certain aspects of certain qualities or aspects that have been lost that make the beauty of the human spirit really enriched. And we could call these another one of those guidelines, another one of those things that I might offer to people, which is, how much fun do you have every day? Like, how much purposeful fun do you create? Or are you a very serious person? Because if you're a very, very serious person, that does something inside of the mind, and that does something inside of someone's existence. And so I'm a big believer in create fun, create play wherever you go, because that invites creativity. It invites innovation. It invites the better, in my opinion, the better pieces of what it means to live a human life. Because there are a great deal of very serious, very challenging, very adverse moments daily, especially right now, way more right now. How do you bring harmony to that? You have to invite some sort of laughter, joy, peace, prosperity, play, these kinds of things to bring harmony to all of that challenge, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It's that finding that inner balance at all times. Like, we have to pay reverence to what's going on in the world. And there's a lot of devastation globally. There's a lot of personal devastation going on for people financially, with, relationships are on the line, all of these things. There's so many different things happening because we're all being put into these compressed containers with limitations. And it's like literally our free will and our ego are like, no, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But like, if we are able to say, okay, if I have time to spend all that time, in the negative, let me try and rebalance myself. Let me bring myself out of that. And I even picked up like a paintbrush for the first time in 10 years. I've been painting, like doing things that I didn't think I desired to do anymore, but I think I just didn't think they were that important to do. And then realizing that joy of just creating something just to create, not to put it anywhere, not to get paid, not to get clout, but to literally just create and move that energy and get out of like the negative thought loops that we catch ourselves in, is such a simple step. And I do see a lot of creativity. I do see a lot of positivity coming through this. And I think people are recognizing that more and more as they realize the quarantine may be extended and has been already extended and all these things, like a settling into. But there is still a lot of this type of energy going around.
Even for people that are extremely positive, and there are a lot of individuals that are saying, I'm being extremely positive right now. But when I start asking questions and I start listening to how they're responding to the questions I'm asking, I'm like, you're lying to yourself. You need to sit and journal and really think through what's going on with you, because I like the face you're putting on. Don't get me wrong. Putting a facade on of positivity is better than nothing, because at least you're trying to be positive.
And don't they say if you like
yeah, no. If you smile, obviously it'll turn into a smile that feels, that will be authentic for somebody long enough. But once again, for me, that's kind of, I guess that I would call that the fake it till you make it paradigm. And I don't like that at all. Like, I know that other people like ascribe to it, like it's a thing, but as a coach, I've coached over 1,500 people in the last 10 to 12 years. I'm telling you, stop faking it. Just make it.
Face it till you make it too.
Yeah. Face it. Yeah. Because then you're actually dealing with the truth, and you're going to get to the root of it, and then create from it. And oftentimes, and I know that you know this better than most, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. In fact, it's really ugly. And in that ugliness, there is still divinity. There is still a part of the whole worth acknowledging and sitting with.
Absolutely. It's all sacred, all of it.
Yeah. Yep. And so for me, I guess I'm working on, I don't know if you know much about nonviolent communication. I don't know if you know much about motivational interviewing, but these are sort of two methodologies that I have never really been privy to, because as a hypnotist, as a psychologist, as an influencer, I spent most of my time practicing how to influence, how to make statements that would alter someone's consciousness and alter someone's reality. Well, that's this side of support. But then there's the whole other side of support. And I love that about nonviolent communication. And I love that about basically the practice of empathy and compassion that I'm really just digging into in a really meaningful way now. And as I'm realizing that it's really powerful to just be with someone, asking very specific kinds of questions without yourself at all involved, which is sort of seems counterintuitive to what I've been saying on the call thus far, which is go into yourself, journal, meditate, like understand yourself more. This is the flip side of that. And of course, big believers in harmony. So you got to bring balance to the whole thing, which is once you've spent time with yourself, what would it be like to spend time completely in someone else without judgment? And that's the challenging part. And is still challenging for me, is to be without judgment. Especially when the person that's telling you the thing that you don't want to hear is your leader, or is that person you've asked to reflect back to you. And when they reflect back to you, you go, I don't want to hear it.
Yep. I experienced that a lot of actually, I don't know if you know about human design.
I do.
My human design is, I'm a projector 3/6 or something like that, if anyone does human design readings out there. But
and now somebody who's listening to this right now is already drafting something up to send to you.
And essentially one of my biggest qualities is that I have a lot to teach, I have a lot to share, but I have to be asked first. If I'm not asked first, it's not received. It gets like blown up right in front of me. And even like, though that's my human design and specific to me, it's actually advice that I give to anybody in the world too. Like there are certain situations where you may see something in someone and you may be able to find a way to like speak to them about it without them coming to you. But most often, if someone's not ready to make a change, if someone doesn't have the desire to make a change with themselves, if they don't feel like they're actually this like self-sovereign being and that they're like, woe is me, and they're lost in all of that and not ready, you go and tell them to make a change, or not even woe is me. They're just like, I'm great the way I am, even though they may be negatively affecting their own life or other people by what they're doing. And then you go and you say something and they were not like wanting to receive it. Yeah, right back in your face. So it's really interesting. It's a really interesting journey. That's also, coming out with this show for me, it's scary because it's like, what if people don't want to listen to what I have to say? And you know what? Like, even if 5 people listen to what I have to say, it's great. I'm affecting those people's lives, and that's all. But
and I think the most important, number one, I am loving the fact that you are approaching these fears by just doing it.
Thank you.
I'm loving that you just walked right up. In fact, I see the courage in you and the transcendence and the humanity in you very deeply. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And then one of the things I really appreciated about you most when I met you at Anarchapulco was you were so open to saying, this is what I want. And you even communicated to me, if it's okay, I'm not going to share any details or anything, but you communicated your fears. And you communicated those questions to me. What if this, what if that, what if, and I remember you looking at me and saying, what are your thoughts? And me going, for half a second in the back of my head, I just went, you're already there. Like, because of what I was listening to you, I was listening to how your thought process were rolling. I was like, you're already there. The only thing you have left to do is do it. And that's the big thing. I've noticed a lot of my clients are so scared of so much of life because of their relationship to pain. And so because they have not ever had a real awakening or a real opportunity to connect around their pain, meet their pain and have a relationship to their pain, they've come to these moments where fear shows up, like you've described, and they're worried about how people are going to receive it. And I go, but the only way you're going to be stimulated to figure out how you're going to meet those things is to meet them first. It's where intention becomes action. And I say that to people a
Absolutely.
lot. Information without application is useless. And I would say that's probably one of my strongest virtues is self-discipline. I'm like, if I want something, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And then I just go do it. And because for me, that's where my wisdom gets cultivated. Not everybody is that way. Everybody has their own way of doing it. But I prefer to dive into the deep end of the pool and then figure out how to swim.
Totally.
You know, my business
Beautiful.
partner Marcus Oki is the founder and co-partner for Your Charisma Coach, one of the companies that I own. And he often says sometimes you got to just jump out of the airplane and sort your parachute out on the way down. You know,
Yeah,
and
figure it
I
out.
love that. I looked at him and I said, isn't that kind of flying? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, for that period of time when you are gliding through the air trying to figure your parachute out, if you are obsessed with the parachute, you're missing you're missing the scene. You're missing the earth underneath you as you're, moving through space. So can you sort out the parachute while you're flying, so that right when you need it, you just go whoop, pull the rope, and then poop, and then you just float all the way down to the ground. And for me, that's the fast path to growth. If you want the fast path, scary as hell, challenging to the nth degree, beyond what most people can deal with, but ultimately satisfying when you power through it and push through it. And that was the biggest thing that I appreciated in watching you on that stage. The spotlight on you, mic in hand, most of the people in the room not really knowing what you were going to share or what you were about, and me knowing all of the hurdles you jumped over within 48, 72 hours to be standing there, because I was privy to it. So it was like, that for me was more inspiring than what you shared. And what you shared was really inspiring, inspired, not just inspiring for me, but inspired expression. But what you did behind that for me is the juice that's worth the squeeze.
Thank you, Jonny. That means the world to me. Honestly, that conference was such a portal for me, and you were such an inspiration, like I said, and I wouldn't have been on that stage if I had not had those conversations with you. We opened up and unlocked and, excavated that debris real freaking quick. Like, I know I'd been doing work for a while on myself, but I still had that blockage, and we literally tore that wall down, man. And
You were
here we
so
are.
close. You were so close. Like, I love that you're actually acknowledging the self-work that you've already done, because that's really, really important. I see another thing in America that I don't see in other cultures around the world, which is as soon as we get done doing something, we immediately almost like say, forget it, it's done now, next, next, next. And we never get a chance to actually fully acknowledge emotionally what we just went through and how we shined. So we don't celebrate. And I see this everywhere. It's probably the number one question I enjoy asking people when they express something that they're proud of themselves for, which is rare. There's always a touch of shame, because our society, at least American society, I wouldn't say the whole world does this, but we say, don't brag. You know what I mean? Don't gloat. It's egocentric. It's arrogant. I think the way you share it shows much more about that than what you're sharing. So when somebody shares something that they just achieved or accomplished, my favorite question is, so what are you doing to celebrate? And I almost always get this blank, almost zombie-like look on their face for at least a good 3 to 5 seconds. And generally it's followed by 3 words. I don't know. and I go, what if we were to plan that? We are approaching these challenges, these walls, these blocks, these obstacles that are in our lives, and we know we want to achieve. We know we want to get past them. We know we want to go beyond it. But what carrot are we putting on the other side of the wall that's going to inspire us to go beyond the wall if it's not a celebration? What's the reward? You know, what are you doing to honor the fact that you made the hard choice and you powered through, you pushed through? That for me is like everything. So if you're listening right now, every time you set a goal, add right next to it what you're going to do to celebrate when you achieve that goal. Otherwise, what's it all for? Motivation is going to go over time as challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge hits in the face, and there's nothing to get from it that's tangible, that's palpable. And it can be something as simple as, I'm going to honor myself by going to the beach today, and I am going to get naked, and I'm going to lay down in the waves. I'm going to lay down in the water and just let myself be. That's still something. You know what I mean? In honor of, or in the energy of, celebration.
Absolutely.
So
that is a beautiful piece of advice there.
Something that just came up for me.
I love that. And I think that we don't take enough pride in ourselves. You know, I think that there's maybe sometimes a limit to like our pride. If we're just too prideful that we're being self-righteous, okay, sure, that's negative. But to not have any pride, like that's why people also spend so many years of their lives being like, well, I'm only going to lead my life a certain way to make like my parents proud, or make like my teacher proud, or my partner proud. Whereas I don't need to be proud of myself, because we're not supposed to have self-pride. It's actually really good to be proud, to own your power, to step into your magnificence and say, yeah, I own it. And this is me. And I'm really fucking cool. And that's okay. That's okay. I don't mean anything by it, but I love myself and I enjoy it, and it's freeing. And to also, set those goals. And a lot of people just in the rat race are like, okay, goal done, next goal. Instead of taking that reverence, that time, that space in between, like the, self-massage, take a bath, run naked on the beach,
anything,
whatever it may be, eat a tub of ice cream because you've been doing so good, you want to celebrate with sugar.
Literally anything.
Do.
Literally, it can be anything. It can be anything as long as it's done in the spirit of gratitude for yourself.
Yes.
As long as it's in gratitude for yourself. And that's what I'm starting to realize I myself have sucked at. So this is something I'm saying this out loud because it has become more like it continues to repeat itself to me over time. Because once again, context. I'm in a context where nobody does it. It's just not common because people mistake being proud for being prideful. And I don't see those two things as the same at all. I see them as being different. But when you're raised in a society that says any expression like that falls underneath pridefulness, you're being programmed to not have access to that entire part of you. And that, for me, is saddening. That is saddening and scary. And people wonder why there, so many antidepressants, being shuffled out like it's water. That it's, a society, a paranoid society that's willing to give up sovereignty for security, for fake security, for falsified security, blows my mind. And it all starts with owning, like you said. I love that. I love that word. Ownership, owning you, which includes the good stuff. You know what I mean? It
And the
includes
bad
all the good
stuff.
stuff. Oh, it has to include the
All of
bad
it.
stuff too. Yeah, it has to
All of
include the
it.
bad stuff too.
But like, yeah,
Absolutely.
we're so good at owning the bad stuff, like whatever, we should own it. We should be able to own it, because then we can, you know, make amends for things that we may mess up with our own hands. We can also see how far we've grown from certain aspects of ourselves, and to be able to use all of that to then be like, but I have all this really epic stuff too up here, guys. And that's also inspiring to be
Yep.
able to show your how dynamic we are as humans. You know, we have
Agreed.
all of the things, you know, we have the
Agreed.
good, the bad, the ugly, the funny, the this, the that, whatever.
And the invisible.
Mm.
And this is, wow, I can't believe, look at you, you're inspiring me. There's so much stuff coming out. No, this stuff is coming out of me right now. So I'm gonna share this real quick as sort of a final thought, because I know we're coming to the end of our time.
Yeah.
There is a series of things you cannot know are there until a situation brings it up so that you can reflect on it. And so, yes, it's own your dark, own your the bad stuff in your life, own the challenges, own these things, which totally agree with you 100%, and own the good stuff and all the rest of that stuff, own that too. And own all the stuff that's you haven't seen yet.
I
Own
like that a
all the
lot.
stuff in you haven't seen yet, and forgive that future self for not having seen it.
What a
You know, forgive
practice.
that future self for not having seen it, because when it does come up, I'm noticing something that I would love, that I really want to help people with, and that is, how do you meet the shock? Because it does. Something happens and you go, wow, I did not know I was doing that. I did not know that's how I was perceiving reality, or that's how that was affecting this person, or that's how that thing has been creating this thing in my life. And when that shock comes up, we are almost shell shocked, like where you're just frozen, and your brain and your mind and your soul is just trying to go, what just happened? You know, and that's where I believe presence plays a huge role, and what I call the art of allowing, which is like, allow all options, allow infinite possibilities, allow everything to be in your space, and do the best you can to roll with it. You know, adaptation means change over time.
Absolutely.
So not
So
easy. Not
Johnny,
easy. Nice to say though.
yes,
Easy to say.
beautiful,
Not
beautiful to
not
say, not
necessarily
easy
easy
to
in
always
practice.
implement. Sorry, we just spoke on top of each other. We both have a lot to say.
We do.
But that'll be for another episode with you. I'd love to have you on here again.
Love to come back.
Yes. Thank you so much, Johnny. How can people reach you if they'd like to utilize your beautiful, wonderful servitude of coaching?
Thank you. Well, there's two ways. There's the psycho part, and then there's the social part. Okay, so if everybody wants to reach out to me because they're going through some problem or issue or challenge in their life that they need some support around, they can find me at processyourpotential.com. If you want to send me an email, it's just Jonny, JONNY @processyourpotential.com. And for any of the social work, if you're finding yourself at a place in your life where you want to be more social, more connective, you want to be able to share yourself and be able to speak on stage, be able to offer your expressions from a pure soulful place, then they can find me and my business partners at yourcharismacoach.com, your charisma coach. And it's Jonny at yourcharismacoach.com if they want to send an email for that. Samantha, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will see you next time.
I'll see you next time.